Video game services are nothing new. In fact, PlayStation had a game service long before Microsoft that many of you may know as EA Play, started in 2014 if I remember correctly. But because of the way game services are discussed today, some of you may be surprised to know that video game subscription services actually goes back as far as the 80s, and companies like Atari and Mattel were pioneers of the idea. The first attempt was made by Mattel with their Intellivision console in 1980. Known as the Play Cable, this service allowed subscribers to download new games onto their Intellivision console through the use of television cables. With only 20 games being made available at a time, it was discontinued during the video game crash of 1983. Then there was Atari's Game Line. The service allowed subscribers to download games through the use of an external modem. Unfortunately, the number of games was severely limited, only cost $1 and was only playable for 10 days. Then in the 1990s, it was Nintendo's and Sega's turn to take a whack at it. Nintendo dipped their toes into the market with the Satellaview service for the SNES, which transmitted games through satellite signals. While it was only available in Japan, it offered subscribers over 114 games and featured a mix of NES remakes and new SNES games. Then Sega introduced the Sega Channel, a service for the Sega Genesis. This service was provided through a cable television adapter. Game offerings would be rotated monthly, with subscribers gaining access to over 70 games at a time. These are just examples of subscription services that existed long before PlayStation's or Microsoft's subscription service. Offsetting can be used in a few different ways, but for the purpose of this video, we'll be discussing how Sony and Microsoft uses it in their financial reports to shareholders. Offsetting losses in the gaming industry is as common as sand in the desert. If you're a gaming hobbyist, you've probably heard more than once about how companies take losses on hardware, then offset those losses with profits from software. But any product can be used to offset losses from another. Let's take a look. The first thing to understand is, you can't just say to your shareholders that losses in one product is being offset by profits in another. By law, you are required to document such claims. For example, in Q3 of 2020, Sony used profits from 3 products to offset losses stemming from low sales of the PlayStation 5. According to an article by Hypebeast, in its recently revealed quarterly report, Sony revealed to its investors that it actually sells the PlayStation 5 at a loss. According to Sony, the strategic price point was used to undercut the Microsoft Xbox Series X and S releasing around the same time. The company offset its losses with gaming sales and other entertainment revenue. Click on the link and scroll down. As you can see here on page 16 of Sony's Q3 2020 financial report, Sony took losses on the PlayStation 5 due to price points that was lower than the manufacturing cost. But at the top of that same section, you can see an increase in profits from software sales, PlayStation Plus, which by the way is also a gaming sub-service, and PlayStation 4 hardware sales. These 3 products offset losses from the PlayStation 5 in the year 2020. What you're going to see next is a video I made for a friend who makes content on another platform. However, I'm going to use it on this video to demonstrate how, according to a Microsoft financial report to shareholders, Game Pass was also used to offset losses from other Microsoft products. Okay, so it says here, Xbox Game Pass helped Microsoft offset gaming revenue loss in Q4 2022. And down here it says, according to Microsoft recent Q4 2022 financial report, Xbox Game Pass has helped offset gaming revenue loss, which have been reported to be $259 million or 7%. So you go ahead and click on the report here and you got to scroll hella down. I already know this because I've already been here. It was some interesting stuff in here, but I'm not going to take you through that. And let's see here, productivity, intellectual, more personal computing. I think it's in here, and yeah, here it is right here. And according to the Q4 Microsoft financial report, gaming revenue decreased $259 million or 7%, driven by decrease in Xbox content and services and Xbox hardware. Xbox content services revenue decreased 6%, driven by lower engagement hours and monetization in third-party and first-party content, offset in part by growth in Xbox Game Pass subscriptions. So, Game Pass was used to offset losses from other Microsoft products, even during a time when the industry as a whole struggles. Even without exclusives, the fact that every now and then Game Pass gives their subscribers access to third-party day-and-date game releases is awesome. Even if Microsoft were to release their games on other platforms but included them in Game Pass, that would still be great for the service and their customers. Just as an example, I've enjoyed Uplay and EA subscription services for years, even though their games are multi-platform. As a gamer and customer, I could care less about exclusive games. If there's a game I want to play, I'm probably going to end up playing it at some point, and more than likely at a discount rate. That said, Microsoft is slated to have a few attractive exclusive games coming to Game Pass in 2023. This list of games, especially in the year 2024, will probably increase immensely once the Activision Blizzard deal comes to an end. For a gaming hobbyist with an extensive backlog list of games to play, Game Pass is like a wet dream because you can try games to see if they're even worthy of being on a backlog list. If a game is set to come off of Game Pass, the sales prices offered to subscribers have proven to be very attractive. Let's get one thing straight. Going forward, Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo will more than likely always have subscription services. As far as vanilla subscription services, Microsoft isn't doing anything new. However, Microsoft is throwing the industry a curveball by placing their brand new releases on the service. This isn't forcing other companies to do the same, however, they and their fans are taking notice. I'm no fortune teller, but because the service seems to be doing well even during hard times for the industry as a whole, once Microsoft is able to get all of their ducks in a row, that will be the perfect time to assess just how successful such a service can be. Even if the day-and-date model fails, Game Pass will more than likely always be one of Microsoft's most attractive offerings, and it will more than likely be the service that sets the standards and trends for all others. The more money you make, the more money you'll probably spend on conveniences. For example, instead of renting a car to drive to a destination, you may choose to fly there instead, even if it costs more money. If you choose to take a trip to Disney in Florida, instead of staying at a local motel, you may choose to stay at one of Disney's themed resort properties. Instead of waking up every morning to drive to Disney, you can actually wake up on the Disney property with the Disney park and everything else you need only a short train ride away. In other words, those who have the money usually use their money to turn inconvenient situations into convenient situations. Believe it or not, conglomerates are the same way. The more money they have, the more likely it is that their low-tier executives will fly in first class and their top-tier executives will fly in private jets. Microsoft probably viewed their lack of studios as a nerve-wracking inconvenience, especially while trying to deal with a competitor that often proved themselves to be ruthless and willing to do anything to maintain their status in the industry. While Microsoft certainly could have spent countless dollars on flights and hotels to attend numerous coffee-drenched meetings to outbid Sony for exclusivity deals, I'm sure they thought it was more convenient to simply buy publishers because, well, they could afford it. And I have no doubt that if Sony could afford to do the same thing, they most certainly would. Seems that it wasn't that long ago that game ownership wasn't even a topic for discussion. Gamers purchased their games the same way they purchased everything else, at the register. You went to the store and purchased the game by handing the cashier your money, then exited the store with the game in hand. There were no patches or updates, so if the game was glitchy, you just had to accept the fact that you were the proud owner of a game that sucked. And it would suck forever. Personally, I would love nothing more than for those days to return. As long as you had the hardware, you could play the game that you owned until your heart was content anytime you wanted. But today I own games that I can no longer play because I no longer have the hardware to play them. Even so, I have no interest in disposing of them, and I still take pride in ownership of those games each time I take a look at my collection. But unfortunately, like you, I don't own the world, I just live in it. And in the world that I live in, game ownership is disappearing at an extremely fast rate. The road that led us to this unfortunate place in gaming history started with the invention of the World Wide Web, which was created by scientist Tim Berners-Lee at a government-funded lab known as CERN. With the advancement of this new technology came positives and negatives. While technological advancements could be used for the best interest of everyone, it is the priority of corporations to use such opportunities to increase profits at all costs. The rising tides isn't for all boats in their view, because the only boat that matters is the one they're riding in. This is true even of technology that was created with American tax dollars. We may have paid to create the technology, but once enough donor cash is passed around in Washington, D.C., the oligarchs usually take full control of it and eventually credit for it. Sadly, this is the case with the World Wide Web. While common class people enjoy more than a few conveniences from the technology, those conveniences are usually tied to some corporation's bottom line. Because of the World Wide Web, you now have the luxury of not having to burn gas to go to Best Buys to purchase a game. From the comfort of your living room, you can purchase a game almost as fast as it takes gravity to pull your backside down into a lazy boy. In many cases, you can even start playing the game before the game is completely downloaded. But it is the corporations that obviously benefit the most. Every cost that went into getting the physical games to the stores is practically gone now. It isn't hard to imagine that in the very near future, that is, if brick and mortar stores are even still allowed to sell video games, instead of selling the physical disc, the game will be supplied to the customer with a code printed out on a receipt. I have no doubt that in the very near future, the lack of game ownership will be as accepted as the lack of privacy is today. If you're as old as I am, you can easily remember when the idea of a private company being able to track you was considered Orwellian. But today, it isn't uncommon to hear someone say something like, well, if you don't have anything to hide, what's the big deal? Corporations have learned that with enough money passed around to lawmakers, great marketing, and consistent messaging, they can convince their customers to accept almost anything, especially if that change comes with social conveniences such as being able to make purchases without even getting out of bed. I personally don't like the direction we're heading, but I have no choice but to accept the fact that I exist in a global community where these sorts of commerce or business structures aren't designed based on my personal feelings. I have finally come to the conclusion that due to the inevitability of physical games going the way of ancient history, maybe subscription services is in my best interest as a consumer going forward. Well, there's also emulation, but that's another video for another time. But I'll be interested to see you guys' conversation in the comment section, seeing what your opinion is on the subject. But hey guys, until next time, as usual, stay safe.